Hi, my name is Jonathan Klein. I am the editor-in-chief of RideApart. Today we are joined by
Robbie Bacon, associate editor at RideApart.
And Janaki Visa, managing editor of RideApart.
Now this is a little bit of an informal video from us, but it is a talking point that has been taking over the internet, Reddit, and forums and in social media all over the place. And that is MotoGP's decision to change the rules of how championships are celebrated within the premier class. Now, this topic was brought to us by our own Robert Bacon, who had some thoughts that turned into a bit of a fight and a discussion. So we thought we would break it into this video so that we can actually talk about. Robbie, can you tell us what the main hit points are?
The bottom line is this weekend, it looks likely that Marc Marquez is going to win his 9th World Championship. Now, those words are important, and they always have been in MotoGP. It's always how we have counted riders who have won in the 125cc or Moto3, the 250 or now Moto2, and the Premier class, which is now going to be called MotoGP. That's one of the new changes. So Marc Marquez will have this weekend probably 7 MotoGP World Championships and 2 World Championships from 125, one from 125cc and one from Moto2. That's a total of 9. All the way through his career, he's celebrated every World Championship. As in, when he got his first one in 125, he celebrated with 1. When he got his second in Moto2, he celebrated with 2. When he got his MotoGP World Championship, he did a 3. So Dorna want him to celebrate with the number 7, which he did already. And he celebrated with 8. And now back to 7. Okay, but everyone has been waiting for him to hit 9, which is the magic number, which is what Valentino Rossi, the greatest of the modern era, hit. So the greatest of the last, whatever, 4 decades, has hit 9. We were waiting all year to see 9 again, and now we will see 7.
But this change comes pretty much a week before he's set to clinch the championship. And now Dorna is saying that they have been communicating this to everyone since the start of the season, which is absolutely not the case.
Not at all.
This is all pretty much circumstantial, except that it actually has been sort of confirmed by the racers. Janaki, you have the quotes from Marquez about this rule change. Hit me with it.
Our colleagues over at the race mentioned they actually spoke directly to Marc Marquez, and they asked him about this incident at Motegi, and he directly told them, and I quote, "It's not in my hands. I always say when I will retire someday, it doesn't matter. Of course, the numbers matter a lot, but most important is that the people remember me is that I gave everything on track. For example, the value of this 2025 championship inside of me is more than others. But in the end, on numbers, it's the same. In the end, numbers are numbers. It's not in my hands, but most important is to increase those numbers. Doesn't matter how." And our colleagues at our sister publication, Motorsport, they wrote a piece about this too. And they quote some championship sources speaking to a local Spanish publication, a Spanish language publication, saying, "Starting this year, and it was a decision made before the end of the season, meaning it has nothing to do with the possibility of Marquez winning the title, the World Championship organizer has started counting MotoGP titles and talking more and more about MotoGP instead of the other categories. In that sense, what we will celebrate in Motegi if Marquez manages to close out the championship will be his 7th MotoGP world title. That also means that we have started using MotoGP instead of Premier Class or 500cc/MotoGP."
So Dorna, the current, managers of MotoGP, are not communicating any of this to the actual public. Again, they're not the ones that are saying this, but it's being confirmed by the actual racers, because we also have confirmation with reporters talking to Johan Zarco and Mark's brother Alex, who were asked the same kind of questions that Mark got. And they're all saying that, numbers matter. I know that in Zarco's case, I'm a 2-time champion. So it's not being confirmed by Dorna or Liberty, for that matter, but it's actually being confirmed by their racers that this is actually a thing, which again breeds into the conspiratorial nature of this topic. and they've changed this basically a handful of days before Marquez is going to get this ninth world championship.
Which seems like really, really sus. Like really sus.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we decided to do this, informal podcast roundtable. Is we wanted to talk about this. Now, Robbie had some thoughts, Jonathan had some thoughts, and I had some. I wish I had the Charlie Day whiteboard conspiracy behind me, because it doesn't. This now there's a couple different through lines, right? There's folks online that are talking about this is coming from MotoGP's new owners, Liberty Media, who also owns Formula One, and that they're trying to make it more manageable for a global audience to understand the different classes within motorcycle racing, within what MotoGP operates. There's also Dorna, who's saying, no, this is not Liberty Media, this is purely us, and that we've absolutely been communicating this to it. Now, it also, as we were talking this through earlier, none of that makes sense, right? Like, none of that makes sense from a marketing perspective. Like, Marc Marquez is the Lewis Hamilton, the Max Verstappen of MotoGP. He's the biggest star in this series, on the grid. Why would you make him do this? It doesn't make sense. But even from a Dorna perspective, it doesn't make sense. And they're saying that they want to, what was the phrasing, Robbie, that they wanted to denote the classes more?
No, basically they want to strengthen the MotoGP
brand.
Strengthen
the MotoGP.
Branding, that the weight that a MotoGP championship has. And historically, you would always call that the premier class, not the MotoGP class. You would say that's the premier class. And the 500cc class / the premier class. Now they're going to lump 500cc and the premier class into one umbrella term, which is MotoGP. And okay, that's fair enough. It's easy to understand. But the fact that they're also sneaking in, or not so sneakily sneaking in, the fact that you can't celebrate your other wins is the big issue here. And also the fact that they're saying, oh, this was done before the season started. We didn't even know Marquez was going to be, so dominant, and Liberty hadn't even bought us yet. So yeah, no, this is this happened ages ago. We just didn't.
But that doesn't even make sense. That doesn't make sense even from a strengthening, like a brand perspective. They were just bought for what was it, Jonathan? It was $4.9 billion by Liberty Media.
Well, and the other thing that makes no sense is like, okay, it's a sport that's been like the premier class of motorcycle racing has been around for decades. It's been around for such a long time. It's been around through so many different technological advancements. It's been around for so many different displacements of motorcycles. And like, it makes absolutely no sense. It's like, what are we throwing out Angel Nieto and Giacomo Agostini's wins? Like, and 13 wins for Nieto and 15 championship wins for Agostini, and they wouldn't count? Like, this makes no sense, especially since Agostini is like very much still around and busy being like, a proud elder statesman of the sport and being like an excellent ambassador of the sport. As is Rossi. Obviously Rossi came later, but like, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, what are we even saying?
Now, this is where I kind of get into the conspiratorial aspect of this whole situation is, again, it doesn't make sense from a brand perspective, because like, if you're Liberty Media and you're coming into this, you want Marquez on your side. You want Marquez to be the ambassador that he is, and to, be the Lewis Hamilton, the Max Verstappen, the Danny Ricciardo of the sport. You want someone that can speak to the press, that you can speak to the consumers and the global audience that they want to cultivate. So pissing him off with this rule change right before it happens doesn't make sense. But it also doesn't make sense from a strengthening of a MotoGP aspect, because if you are going to do that, if you're Dorna and you're going to strengthen the brand, why would you do this to someone that you're basically saying, none of those championships matter, you're about to do this, and you would have so much more fanfare around the MotoGP brand if you allow Marquez to celebrate these 9 wins rather than 7. Now, I personally, I think that makes the decision to denote the classes makes sense. That's me from a personal perspective. It doesn't make sense that you're saying I have 9 championships, 7 are in MotoGP, 2 are in Moto2 and Moto3. That doesn't work. But to do this right now, instead of at the end of the season and communicate it, which they absolutely haven't, that is where I get to the point where I'm like, who's mad at Marquez? Because it doesn't make sense from a business perspective. It doesn't make sense from a marketing perspective. Who's mad at Marquez that wants to piss off, like who wants to dig at Marquez enough that they would do this right before he's about to do something that's matching Rossi, that is solidifying his position
Legacy?
His legacy as one of the best ever. But that's just me going like this, and also understanding that Dorna is run like a mafia. But I want to hear from you two. What are your thoughts? Where do you guys think that this is coming from, and where do you think that this is going?
I jump in here because I agree with you. I see both sides, and having grown up with and always seeing world championships being celebrated as world championships, that's the way I see MotoGP. And it's different to F1, and that's cool. I think that's cool because F1, they do it with F1 titles, championships. But if you watch a MotoGP, crowning of a champion, it is always denoted. It is always said, this is their TK, this is their third Premier Class Championship. They also have championships in Moto2 and a 125cc championship or whatever. It's never said. They never go, oh, they have 5 Premier Class Championships. No one ever says that. They know, Jorge Lorenzo has 3 plus 2. They know, it's always spoken about. Whereas now the speech is being controlled. It's like, no, we don't mention that. We don't celebrate that stuff on this stage anymore as of right now. Why? Make that make sense to me as to why you do it right now. It doesn't make sense. Like you're saying, it's the feeling of something conspiratorial to it, because that doesn't make sense. And also, we said it at the start of the year. Well, then the rumblings from journalists around the world would be getting higher and higher and higher as to wow, okay. Instead, the rumblings are going 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. Oh, 7. Okay, 7. And it feels like controlled speech in this instance, and it doesn't make any sense as to why you would do that right now. And to me, it doesn't make sense in general because every commentator worth their salt always denotes it everywhere.
We would have also been talking about it, right? Like you made that point. We would have been talking about it in the media, within this ecosystem. Like our brethren at Autosport and Motorsport would have been talking about it. We would have been talking about it. Like we've covered MotoGP topics that are as controversial as this in the past, and not a single person has talked about this. So the idea that this has been floating around just doesn't hold water, and I don't care what Dorna says about that. Tanaki, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. The one time I didn't mean to. So yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. It's like Dorna is trying to kind of retcon their speaking about this, because literally no one remembers this having happened. And all of a sudden, and it's not supposed to be personal against Marquez. And yet, they're like, oh, we've always had this planned. But who else was it gonna affect? Realistically, there's no one else that it could possibly have affected this season. So it's really difficult to not see how at some level it has to be some sort of personal thing. And also Rossi kind of straddled the crossover from 500 to MotoGP as we know it now. So all of this, just none of this makes any sense at all. And the fact that we've for however many years, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head how many years the Premier Class has been around. I've just been following it forever. I used to just subscribe to Autosport back in the day. Like, I'm a nut. And like, for as many years as it's been around, we have counted things one way. And now all of a sudden it's 2025 and we're on the precipice of this partnership with Liberty Media. And suddenly we're just going to be like, oh no, sorry. Like, none of the feeder classes, none of the things that racers have to do in order to get to the premier class, they don't count anymore. Like, they just don't count. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, there's the phrase that you use in the office is the math ain't mathin'. And it absolutely isn't. And to that effect, like, you know, Marquez can't talk about this himself, right? He's part of this organization. He's not going to just shit talk the way that we can. And, you know, we haven't heard from Rossi. We haven't heard from a handful of other folks. But to that point of, you know, Marquez's displeasure, he did say it's not in my hands. Those were his exact words. It's not in my hands. And that tells that type of intonation is, you know, that illumination. I can't talk right now. It shines a light on his perspective of the situation where it does feel kind of personal. It was like, it's not in my hands. I can't control it. That, again, who did Marquez piss off at Dorna or higher up that this is now happening to him? Because it just feels such a personal dig. And I'm interested to see, hopefully we get some clips or sound bites from Rossi to weigh in on the topic, because his title, his championship legacy is at risk too.
I think you're dead right with the math ain't mathin'. And also, Janicki made a really good point in that it only will affect Marquez. And like, in the current roster of riders, it could only affect Marquez. You would have to wait so long for it to affect another rider. So,
I mean, Zarco has two
Moto2 World Championships.
Two Moto2 championships. Marc's brother Alex has, you know, a championship. Like,
but in terms of like the ultimate number 9,
yeah, the ultimate number 9 is really just
anyone.
It's really just Marc.
Yeah, so exactly. You're gonna have to wait years for it to even potentially affect someone else, and it's not going to. So like, why put it in right now, right as someone is about to get the 9? You put it in. That, first of all, that ain't mathin'. That ain't mathin' whatsoever. In fact, you want to grow the brand, you've got a guy who's like the new coming, and he's been the new coming for a while, but now he's about to absolutely, undoubtedly, unequivocally, I am matching it. No, you're not. Why would you do that? It hurts the brand. Okay, so that's one thing. It's not, yeah, mathin' anyone else. And as you said, Jonathan, if they announced this at the start of the year, like they said they did, the next headline from any publication would have been, he won't get 9. Like that. But no, now we're just hearing it right now. And I think that's the micro, as in like that. The micro thing is that he doesn't get to show number 9. But I think on the macro level is it takes away from the other two world championships, the Moto3 and the Moto2, which historically, you know, they have been more their own thing. Now they're becoming more and more feeder classes, whereas they weren't before. Like, people were going to Moto3, they were class specialists, and then they went off somewhere else. Moto2 specialists or 250cc specialists, and then they didn't go to the premier class. And that was okay. Like, that wasn't a failure. That was just like, my career went this way. Like, that's what happened. Whereas now, I feel like it is diminishing or lessening those titles that were earned. But in the future, what does that do to the sport? In the future, how do you look upon those titles? And in the future, how do you grow an audience that is really interested? Because MotoGP fans are interested usually in Moto3 and Moto2, and they follow the progression of people. And like Pedro Acosta is a great example. Like, he didn't win, but he won, and people were following him. And then he got to there, and he got to MotoGP, and everyone was ready for him. We were so excited. Whereas now, if you're looking at, you know, at Moto3, the World Championship doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about it. After you get it, you never talk about it again. And after you get Moto2, you never talk about it again. Once you get to MotoGP, then you can start talking about it. No, never been like that. Doesn't make sense to do it right now. And I think that's, the macro, and then the micro is, again, it doesn't make sense to do it right now on the eve of our ninth.
That's what I keep coming back to. It just doesn't make sense on the eve of Marquez getting it.
Unless, and this actually made me think more down a different conspiratorial rabbit hole. What if the reasoning behind suddenly bringing this out and being like, okay, we're going to say that this is what we've been meaning to do all along, but we're not going to bring it up until the weekend of the eve that he might actually do it. Maybe they were hoping there would be such a short window of time for people to be upset about this that like pretty soon we'd convince ourselves that this was how it had always been all along. What if that's it? Like, what if they were hoping, well, he's almost certain to clinch it this weekend, whatever number you are counting. Like, unless an act of God happens and he somehow doesn't finish the race, like, he's going to do it. And whether you're counting to 7 or you're counting to 9 or you completely forgot how to count, like, he's going to do it this weekend. That's almost completely assured. So what if they're just like, okay, well, if we just quietly slide this under the rug, then maybe no one will notice.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past Dorna. They make really terrible decisions. We all remember what happened at the season finales in Spain last year, and the tone deafness of all of their communications. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past that organization to be like, we're not going to really think about this. We'll throw it out. And then, having this type of a storm occur. But I don't know. Like, it feels disrespectful to Mark. Like, it just feels like this disrespectful type of action that it seems premeditated. And maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. I haven't seen this take in the media, but like, it seems premeditated. Like someone has an axe to grind.
I think
like either.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to say it either sounds like either it's premeditated or it is the most careless thing that ever happened. And
the problem with Dorna is it could be both.
You never know. I think basically you look at it like a person with any bit of sense about you, and you say, okay, like, why would you do this? Like, let's make this make sense. I want this to make sense. I don't want to be. I stayed up last night because I was infuriated about this. I couldn't sleep. I was so angry, and I just wanted it to make sense. If someone gave me an avenue to make it make sense, I could have slept. I don't want to be angry about this. But everything leads to no sense, which then kind of leads to, okay, well, what if we bend this into conspiratorial avenues? Like, okay, is it so that like Rossi is the only one to get 9? Like, doesn't really make sense because Rossi's already said his 10th world championship was taken from him in 2015. He already labels it like that. So he's not on your side. And if he is, he's kind of turned his back on the things he said in the past. Or I haven't said this at all because it sounds too crazy. But there are people saying, Marquez maybe winning on Ducati, so strong, isn't going to be that good for the sport in the long run, because once he beats Rossi, he might just retire, or he might go to Honda for a return. Return and do it on Honda, or something else, some other challenge. Be the first rider to win on X amount of brands, OEMs. But what if you just suddenly take away his ability to celebrate 9 world championships? Would that keep him in the sport a little bit longer so he gets to hold up the 9? I don't know. That sounds like a very far thing, but I just cannot. That's how far I'm reaching to find sense in this.
That's definitely an avenue. Like, that's definitely an avenue. No, too much. Maybe that's too much. But maybe it's not. Like, that's the problem with this. That's the problem with this type of situation, is you just don't know. Like, and the way that they have communicated and not communicated to the press and the public and the fans makes it so much worse. Like, you have created a firestorm around a sport that you're supposedly trying to make a more global thing. Like, you are trying to pull a Formula One Netflix Drive to Survive ascension. That is their intended goal with the Liberty takeover. And the way that this is coming out is only hampering that goal. Jonathan.
I just had another thought, kind of spin off of everything that we've been saying here. So if you're going down the Netflix Drive to Survive avenue, what if the problem with Marquez isn't that he's so ridiculously talented and he's done all these things that maybe he wasn't even supposed to be able to do? Like, regardless of what you may personally feel about the man, like, his comeback story was unbelievable. And there was no Drive to Survive kind of thing, like, documenting that. Like, and that would have been prime viewing. Like, absolutely. If you were going to do that sort of like docuseries kind of thing, like, that would have been amazing. You know, if you could have gotten in on like his training strategies. If maybe they could have had access to, like, you know, whatever therapies he was going through in order to, like, get physically and mentally fit to get back up after, you know, his diplopia and after, like, all his various injuries, and get to the point that he's getting to with Ducati. And so I wonder if there's some resentment there, first of all. And second of all, the trend with MotoGP over all these years is, you know, people have been getting younger and younger and younger, and et cetera, et cetera. What if they just want to be able to start over with, like, someone younger and kind of, like, follow them on that sort of thing for a docuseries?
I
What
mean,
if
it
that's
could
part
be
of it?
that.
I would
It
say that
could.
Netflix didn't get it, but they did have the documentary on Marquez.
They did on
Not
Amazon.
There Can Only Be One, which was a complete, I won't say what I was about to say, but failure. And they did have that
It's
series.
not good.
They followed him to the Mayo Clinic. They followed
Yeah.
his comeback. So they did do that.
Right.
They followed him nearly retiring. But I get what you're saying. Start fresh. These are the new numbers for the new era. And
Right.
this is where we're heading to.
So maybe there's a combined thing. It's like, okay, we didn't get this amazing story that maybe we could have gotten with him. So maybe we're a little mad about that, whether we should be or not. And also the idea that maybe we want to follow someone completely new and, like, have them sort of in their own little bubble and, like, kind of guide them through the process and have, like, this perfect tailor-made.
Wouldn't you want to push him out? Like, wouldn't you want Marquez then to retire? And wouldn't he be more likely to retire if he had the 9? Like,
you would think.
You could actually go two ways of this.
Humans are human, and humans don't always think things through very well.
That is accurate. I mean, you could actually go two ways with this, right? You can go the way that you just talked about, or you can go the way of it being, you know, the docudrama type of storyline that they want to flip on their head, where it's like, it's manufactured drama. Like, it could be that as a portion too. I just don't. I don't know if Netflix has already agreed to a MotoGP and if they're already following along, just because it's so, like, the deal with Liberty went so late into the season because of European regulators. But I don't know. The topic lends itself to conspiracy.
That makes me so sick. That what you just said makes me so sick that it's probably actually makes the most sense. That they've already inked up a deal for Ride to Survive, and go, how can we? He's just crushing it. Here, how about this? We take away his 9th world champion. You can't celebrate that. Maybe. Who knows?
So then, wait. If you add all that together, then the additional math is because he only has 7 championships, we'll get him to race for longer, and there will be more drama with him.
It'll be it'll be a manufactured drama that happened the season before we started filming.
Right, because we weren't able to capture the actual drama that was his comeback. Oh, sure, he's got another comeback in him. He's got another comeback that no one was ever supposed to be able to do. Sure, he must. He must be able to do it twice.
Here's his record-breaking 8th MotoGP championship. The first year of Liberty Media Ride to Survive.
And you're all here to watch it. The first time.
I think we've cracked it, guys. I think we've cracked it.
That must
what
be
it
it.
is.
But you know
That's
what?
got to be
Like,
it.
this has been super fun to talk conspiracies and go full Charlie Day. Always sunny in Philadelphia with y'all. If you guys like this format, let us know. We have thoughts. We have topics that we can go completely conspiratorial into. Leave us a like, subscribe, comment, and yeah, we'll try to do this again when there's another insane thing that happens. Peace.
Cheers.
Yep. Take care.